The Book of the Laws of Various Countries by Bardesane. Bardesane. Some days since we were calling to pay a visit to our brother Shemashgram, and Bardesane came and found us there. And when he had made inquiries after his health and ascertained that he was well, he asked us, "What were you talking about? For I heard your voice outside as I was coming in." For it was his habit, whenever he found us talking about anything before he came, to ask us, "What were you saying?" that he might talk with us about it. "Avida here," said we to him, "was saying to us, if God is one, as you say, and if he is the creator of men, and if it is his will that you should do that which you are commanded, why did he not so create men that they should not be able to do wrong, but should constantly be doing that which is right? For in this way his will would have been accomplished." "Tell me, my son Avida," said Bardesane to him, "why it has come into your mind that the God of all is not one, or that he is one, but does not will that men should behave themselves justly and uprightly." "I, sir," said Avida, "have asked these brethren, persons of my own age, in order that they may return me an answer." "If," said Bardesane to him, "you wish to learn, it were for your advantage to learn from someone who is older than they. But if to teach, it is not requisite for you to ask them, but rather that you should induce them to ask you what they wish. For teachers are asked questions, and do not themselves ask them, or if they ever do ask a question, it is to direct the mind of the questioner, so that he may ask properly, and they may know what his desire is. For it is a good thing that a man should know how to ask questions. For my part," said Avida, "I wish to learn, but I began first of all to question my brethren here, because I was too bashful to ask you." "You speak becomingly," said Bardesane, "but know nevertheless that he who asks questions properly and wishes to be convinced and approaches the way of truth without contentiousness has no need to be bashful, because he is sure by means of the things I have mentioned to please him to whom his questions are addressed. If so be, therefore, my son, you have any opinion of your own respecting this matter about which you have asked, tell it to us all. And if we too approve of it, we shall express our agreement with you, and if we do not approve of it, we shall be under obligation to show you why we do not approve of it. But if you were simply desirous of becoming acquainted with this subject, and hast no opinion of your own about it, as a man who has but lately joined the disciples and is a recent inquirer, I will tell you respecting it, so that you may not go from us empty away. If, moreover, you are pleased with those things which I shall say to you, we have other things besides to tell you concerning this matter. But if you are not pleased, we, on our part, shall have stated our views without any personal feeling." "I too," said Avida, "shall be much gratified to hear and to be convinced, because it is not from another that I have heard of this subject, but I have spoken of it to my brethren here out of my own mind, and they have not cared to convince me, but they say, 'Only believe, and you will then be able to know everything.' But for my part, I cannot believe unless I be convinced." "Not only," said Bardesane, "is Avida unwilling to believe, but there are many others also who, because there is no faith in them, are not even capable of being convinced, but they are always pulling down and building up, and so are found destitute of all knowledge of the truth. But notwithstanding, since Avida is not willing to believe, lo, I will speak to you who do believe concerning this matter about which he asks, and thus he too will hear something further about it." He began accordingly to address us as follows: "Many men are there who have not faith, and have not received knowledge from the true wisdom. In consequence of this, they are not competent to speak and give instruction to others, nor are they readily inclined themselves to hear. For they have not the foundation of faith to build upon, nor have they any confidence on which to rest their hope. Moreover, because they are accustomed to doubt even concerning God, they likewise have not in them the fear of him, which would of itself deliver them from all other fears. For he in whom there is no fear of God is the slave of all sorts of fears. For even with regard to those things of various kinds which they disbelieve, they are not certain that they disbelieve them rightly, but they are unsettled in their opinions and have no fixed belief, and the taste of their thoughts is insipid in their own mouth. And they are always haunted with fear and flushed with excitement and reckless. But with regard to what Avida has said, how is it that God did not so make us that we should not sin and incur condemnation? If man had been made so, he would not have belonged to himself, but would have been the instrument of him that moved him. And it is evident also that he who moves an instrument as he pleases moves it either for good or for evil. And how in that case would a man differ from a harp on which another plays, or from a ship which another guides, where the praise and the blame reside in the hand of the performer or the steersman, and the harp itself knows not what is played on it, nor the ship itself, whether it be well steered and guided or ill, they being only instruments made for the use of him in whom is the requisite skill. But God, in his benignity, chose not so to make man, but by freedom he exalted him above many of his creatures, and even made him equal with the angels. For look at the sun, and the moon, and the signs of the zodiac, and all the other creatures which are greater than we in some points, and see how individual freedom has been denied them, and how they are all fixed in their course by decree, so that they may do that only which is decreed for them, and nothing else. For the sun never says, I will not rise at my appointed time, nor the moon I will not change, nor wane nor wax, nor does any one of the stars say, I will not rise nor set, nor the sea I will not bear up the ships, nor stay within my boundaries, nor the mountains, we will not continue in the places in which we are set, nor do the winds say, we will not blow, nor the earth, I will not bear up and sustain whatsoever is upon me. But all these things are servants and are subject to one decree, for they are the instruments of the wisdom of God, which errs not. Not so, however, with man. For if everything ministered, who would be he that is ministered to? And if everything were ministered to, who would be he that ministered? In that case too there would not be one thing diverse from another, yet that which is one, and in which there is no diversity of parts, is a being which up to this time has not been fashioned. But those things which are destined for ministering have been fixed in the power of man, because in the image of Elohim was he made. Therefore have these things in the benignity of God been given to him, that they may minister to him for a season. It has also been given to him to be guided by his own will, so that whatever he is able to do, if he will, he may do it, and if he do not will, he may not do it, and that so he may justify himself or condemn. For had he been made so as not to be able to do evil and thereby incur condemnation, in like manner also the good which he did would not have been his own, and he could not have been justified by it. For if anyone should not of his own will do that which is good or that which is evil, his justification and his condemnation would rest simply with that fortune to which he is subjected. It will therefore be manifest to you that the goodness of God is great toward man, and that freedom has been given to him in greater measure than to any of those elemental bodies of which we have spoken, in order that by this freedom he may justify himself, and order his conduct in a godlike manner, and be co-partner with angels, who are likewise possessed of personal freedom. For we are sure that, if the angels likewise had not been possessed of personal freedom, they would not have consorted with the daughters of men, and sinned and fallen from their places. In like manner too, those other angels who did the will of their Lord were, by reason of their self-control, raised to higher rank and sanctified, and received noble gifts. For every being in existence is in need of the Lord of all. Of his gifts also there is no end. Know ye, however, notwithstanding what I have said, that even those things of which I have spoken as subsisting by decree are not absolutely destitute of all freedom. And on this account, at the last day, they will all be made subject to judgment. But how, said I to him, should those things which are fixed and regulated by decree be judged? Not inasmuch as they are fixed, O Philip, said he, will the elements be judged, but inasmuch as they are endowed with power. For beings are not deprived of their natural properties when they come to be fashioned, but only of the full exercise of their strength, suffering a decrease of power through their intermingling one with another, and being kept in subjection by the power of their Maker, and insofar as they are in subjection, they will not be judged, but in respect of that only which is under their own control. Those things, said Avida to him, which you have said are very good, but lo, the commands which have been given to men are severe, and they cannot perform them. This, said Bardesan, is the saying of one who has not the will to do that which is right, nay more, of him who has already yielded obedience and submission to his foe. For men have not been commanded to do anything but that which they are able to do. For the commandments set before us are only two, and they are such as are compatible with freedom and consistent with equity. One, that we refrain from everything which is wrong and which we should not like to have done to ourselves, and the other, that we should do that which is right and which we love and are pleased to have done to us likewise. Who then is the man that is too weak to avoid stealing, or to avoid lying, or to avoid acts of profligacy, or to avoid hatred and deception? For lo, all these things are under the control of the mind of man, and are not dependent on the strength of the body, but on the will of the soul. For even if a man be poor and sick and old and disabled in his limbs, he is able to avoid doing all these things. And as he is able to avoid doing these things, so is he able to love and to bless and to speak the truth, and to pray for what is good for everyone with whom he is acquainted. And if he be in health and capable of working, he is able also to give of that which he has. Moreover, to support with strength of body him that is sick and enfeebled, this also he can do. Who then it is that is not capable of doing that which men destitute of faith complain of, I know not. For my part, I think that it is precisely in respect to these commandments that man has more power than in anything else, for they are easy, and there are no circumstances that can hinder their performance. For we are not commanded to carry heavy loads of stones, or of timber, or of anything else, which those only who have great bodily strength can do, nor to build fortresses and found cities, which kings only can do, nor to steer a ship, which mariners only have the skill to steer, nor to measure and divide land, which land measurers only know how to do, nor to practice any one of those arts which are possessed by some, while the rest are destitute of them. But there have been given to us, in accordance with the benignity of God, commandments having no harshness in them, such as any living man whatsoever may rejoice to do. For there is no man that does not rejoice when he does that which is right, nor anyone that is not gladdened within himself if he abstains from things that are bad, except those who were not created for this good thing, and are called tares. For would not the judge be unjust who should censure a man with regard to any such thing as he has not the ability to do? Do you say of these deeds, O Bardesan, said Avida to him, that they are easy to do? To him that has the will, said Bardesan, I have said, and do still say, that they are easy. For this obedience I contend for is the proper behavior of a free mind, and of the soul which has not revolted against its governors. As for the action of the body, there are many things which hinder it, especially old age, and sickness, and poverty. Possibly, said Avida, a man may be able to abstain from the things that are bad, but as for doing the things that are good, what man is capable of this? It is easier, said Bardesan, to do good than to abstain from evil. For the good comes from the man himself, and therefore he rejoices whenever he does good, but the evil is the work of the enemy, and therefore it is that only when a man is excited by some evil passion, and is not in his sound natural condition, he does the things that are bad. For know, my son, that for a man to praise and bless his friend is an easy thing, but for a man to refrain from taunting and reviling one whom he hates is not easy. Nevertheless, it is possible. When, too, a man does that which is right, his mind is gladdened and his conscience at ease, and he is pleased for everyone to see what he does. But when a man behaves amiss and commits wrong, he is troubled and excited, and full of anger and rage, and distressed in his soul and in his body. And when he is in this state of mind, he does not like to be seen by anyone. And even those things in which he rejoices, and which are accompanied with praise and blessing from others, are spurned from his thoughts, while those things by which he is agitated and disturbed are rendered more distressing to him because accompanied by the curse of conscious guilt. Perhaps, however, someone will say that fools also are pleased when they do abominable things. Undoubtedly, but not because they do them as such, nor because they receive any commendation for them, nor because they do them with a good hope, nor does the pleasure itself stay long with them. For the pleasure which is experienced in a healthy state of the soul with a good hope is one thing, and the pleasure of a diseased state of the soul with a bad hope is another. For lust is one thing, and love is another, and friendship is one thing, and good fellowship another. And we ought without any difficulty to understand that the false counterfeit of affection, which is called lust, even though there be in it the enjoyment of the moment, is nevertheless widely different from true affection, whose enjoyment is forever, incorruptible and indestructible. Avida here, said I to him, has also been speaking thus. It is from his nature that man does wrong, for were he not naturally formed to do wrong, he would not do it. If all men, said Bardesanes, acted alike and followed one bias, it would then be manifest that it was their nature that guided them, and that they had not that freedom of which I have been speaking to you. That you may understand, however, what is nature and what is freedom, I will proceed to inform you. The nature of man is that he should be born and grow up, and rise to his full stature, and produce children and grow old, eating and drinking and sleeping and waking, and that then he should die. These things, because they are of nature, belong to all men, and not to all men only, but also to all animals whatsoever, and some of them also to trees. For this is the work of physical nature, which makes and produces and regulates everything, just as it has been commanded. Nature, I say, is found to be maintained among animals also in their actions. For the lion eats flesh in accordance with his nature, and therefore all lions are eaters of flesh. The sheep eats grass, and therefore all sheep are eaters of grass. The bee makes honey, by which it is sustained. Therefore all bees are makers of honey. The ant collects for herself a store in summer, from which to sustain herself in winter, and therefore do all ants act likewise. The scorpion strikes with its sting him who has not hurt it, and thus do all scorpions strike. Thus all animals preserve their nature. The eaters of flesh do not eat herbage, nor do the eaters of herbage eat flesh. Men, on the contrary, are not governed thus, but while in the matters pertaining to their bodies they preserve their nature like animals, in the matters pertaining to their minds they do that which they choose, as those who are free and endowed with power, and as made in the likeness of God. For there are some of them that eat flesh and do not touch bread, and there are some of them that make a distinction between the several kinds of flesh food, and there are some of them that do not eat the flesh of any animal whatever. There are some of them that become the husbands of their mothers, and of their sisters, and of their daughters. And there are some who do not consort with women at all. There are those who take it upon themselves to inflict vengeance like lions and leopards, and there are those who strike him that has not done them any wrong, like scorpions. And there are those that are led like sheep and do not harm their conductors. There are some that behave themselves with kindness, and some with justice, and some with wickedness. If anyone should say that each one of them has a nature so to do, Let him be assured that it is not so. For there are those who once were profligates and drunkards, and when the admonition of good counsels reached them, they became pure and sober, and spurned their bodily appetites. And there are those who once behaved with purity and sobriety, and when they turned away from right admonition and dared to set themselves against the commands of deity and of their teachers, they fell from the way of truth and became profligates and revelers. And there are those who, after their fall, repented again, and fear came and abode upon them, and they turned themselves afresh towards the truth which they had before held. What therefore is the nature of man? For lo, all men differ one from another in their conduct and in their aims, and such only as are of one mind and of one purpose resemble one another. But those men who, up to the present moment, have been enticed by their appetites and governed by their anger, are resolved to ascribe any wrong they do to their Maker, that they themselves may be found faultless, and that he who made them may, in the idle talk of men, bear the blame. They do not consider that nature is amenable to no law. For a man is not found fault with for being tall or short in his stature, or white or black, or because his eyes are large or small, or for any bodily defect whatsoever. But he is found fault with if he steal or lie, or practice deceit, or poison another, or be abusive, or do any other such like things. From hence, lo, it will be evident that for those things which are not in our own hands, but which we have from nature, we are in no wise condemned, nor are we in any wise justified. But by those things which we do in the exercise of our personal freedom, if they be right, we are justified and entitled to praise, and if they be wrong, we are condemned and subjected to blame. Again we questioned him and said to him, There are others who say that men are governed by the decree of fate, so as to act at one time wickedly and at another time well. I too am aware, O Philip and Bardesanes, said he to us, that there are such men, those who are called Chaldeans, and also others who are fond of this subtle knowledge, as I myself also once was. For it has been said by me in another place, that the soul of man longs to know that which the many are ignorant of, and those men make it their aim to do this, and that all the wrong which men commit, and all that they do aright, and all those things which happen to them as regards riches and poverty, and sickness and health, and blemishes of the body, come to them through the governance of those stars which are called the seven, and that they are, in fact, governed by them. But there are others who affirm the opposite of these things, how that this art is a lying invention of the astrologers, or that fate has no existence whatever, but is an empty name, that on the contrary, all things, great and small, are placed in the hands of man, and that bodily blemishes and faults simply befall and happen to him by chance. But others again say that whatsoever a man does, he does of his own will, in the exercise of the freedom which has been given to him, and that the faults and blemishes and other untoward things which befall him he receives as punishment from God. For myself, however, according to my weak judgment, the matter appears to stand thus, that these three opinions are partly to be accepted as true, and partly to be rejected as false. Accepted as true, because men speak after the appearances which they see, and also because these men see how things come upon them as if accidentally. To be set aside as fallacious, because the wisdom of God is too profound for them, that wisdom which founded the world and created man, and ordained governors, and gave to all things the degree of preeminence which is suited to every one of them. What I mean is that this power is possessed by God, and the angels and the potentates and the governors and the elements and men and animals, but that this power has not been given to all these orders of beings of which I have spoken in respect to everything, for he that has power over everything is one. But over some things they have power, and over some things they have not power, as I have been saying. in order that in those things over which they have power the goodness of God may be seen, and in those over which they have no power they may know that they have a superior. There is then such a thing as fate, as the astrologers say. That everything, moreover, is not under the control of our will, is apparent from this, that the majority of men have had the will to be rich, and to exercise dominion over their fellows, and to be healthy in their bodies, and to have things in subjection to them as they please. But that wealth is not found except with a few, nor dominion except with one here and another there, nor health of body with all men, and that even those who are rich do not have complete possession of their riches, nor do those who are in power have things in subjection to them as they wish. But that sometimes things are disobedient to them as they do not wish, and that at one time the rich are rich as they desire, and at another time they become poor as they do not desire. And that those who are thoroughly poor have dwellings such as they do not wish, and pass their lives in the world as they do not like, and covet many things which only flee from them. Many have children and do not rear them. Others rear them and do not retain possession of them. Others retain possession of them, and they become a disgrace and a sorrow to their parents. Some are rich as they wish, and are afflicted with ill health as they do not wish. Others are blessed with good health as they wish, and afflicted with poverty as they do not wish. There are those who have in abundance the things they wish for, and but few of those things for which they do not wish. And there are others who have in abundance the things they do not wish for, and but few of those for which they do wish. And so the matter is found to stand thus, that wealth and honors and health and sickness and children and all the other various objects of desire are placed under the control of fate and are not in our own power, but that on the contrary, while we are pleased and delighted with such things as are in accordance with our wishes, towards such as we do not wish for we are drawn by force. And from those things which happen to us when we are not pleased, it is evident that those things also with which we are pleased do not happen to us, because we desire them, but that things happen as they do happen, and with some of them we are pleased, and with others not. And thus we men are found to be governed by nature all alike, and by fate variously, and by our freedom each as he chooses. But let us now proceed to show with respect to fate that it has not power over everything. Clearly not, because that which is called fate is itself nothing more than a certain order of procession which has been given to the potentates and elements by God, and in conformity with this said procession and order, intelligences undergo change when they descend to be with the soul, and souls undergo change when they descend to be with bodies. And this order, under the name of fate and genesis, is the agent of the changes that take place in this assemblage of parts of which man consists, which is being sifted and purified for the benefit of whatsoever by the grace of God and by goodness has been benefited, and is being and will continue to be benefited until the close of all things. The body, then, is governed by nature, the soul also sharing in its experiences and sensations, and the body is neither hindered nor helped by fate in the several acts it performs. For a man does not become a father before the age of 15, nor does a woman become a mother before the age of 13. In like manner, too, there is a law for old age, for women then become incapable of bearing, and men cease to possess the natural power of begetting children, while other animals, which are likewise governed by their nature, do, even before those ages I have mentioned, not only produce offspring, but also become too old to do so, just as the bodies of men also, when they are grown old, cease to propagate. Nor is fate able to give them offspring at a time when the body has not the natural power to give them. Neither, again, is fate able to preserve the body of man in life without meat and drink, nor yet, even when it has meat and drink, to grant it exemption from death, for these and many other things belong exclusively to nature. But when the times and methods of nature have had their full scope, then does fate come and make its appearance among them, and produce effects of various kinds, at one time helping nature and augmenting its power, and at another crippling and baffling it. Thus, from nature comes the growth and perfecting of the body, but apart from nature, that is by fate, come diseases and blemishes in the body. From nature comes the union of male and female, and the unalloyed happiness of them both. But from fate comes hatred and the dissolution of the union, and moreover, all that impurity and lasciviousness, which by reason of the natural propensity to intercourse, men practice in their lust. From nature comes birth and children, and from fate, that sometimes the children are deformed, and sometimes are cast away, and sometimes die before their time. From nature comes a supply of nourishment sufficient for the bodies of all creatures, and from fate comes the want of sustenance and consequent suffering in those bodies. And so, again, from the same fate comes gluttony and unnecessary luxury. Nature ordains that the aged shall be judges for the young, and the wise for the foolish, and that the strong shall be set over the weak, and the brave over the timid. But fate brings it to pass that striplings are set over the aged, and the foolish over the wise, and that in time of war the weak command the strong, and the timid the brave. You must distinctly understand that, in all cases in which nature is disturbed from its direct course, its disturbance comes by reason of fate, and this happens because the chiefs and governors, with whom rests that agency of change which is called nativity, are opposed to one another. Some of them, which are called dexter, are those which help nature and add to its predominance whenever the procession is favorable to them, and they stand in those regions of the zodiac which are in the ascendant, in their own portions. Those, on the contrary, which are called sinister, are evil, and whenever they, in their turn, are in possession of the ascendant, they act in opposition to nature, and not on men only do they inflict harm, but at times on animals also, and trees and fruits, and the produce of the year, and fountains of water, and in short, on everything that is comprised within nature, which is under their government. And in consequence of this, namely the divisions and parties which exist among the potentates, some men have thought that the world is governed by these contending powers without any superintendence from above. But that is because they do not understand that this very thing, I mean the parties and divisions subsisting among them, and the justification and condemnation consequent on their behavior, belong to that constitution of things founded in freedom which has been given by God, to the end that these agents likewise, by reason of their self-determining power, may be either justified or condemned. Just as we see that fate crushes nature, so can we also see the freedom of man defeating and crushing fate itself, not, however, in everything, just as also fate itself does not in everything defeat nature. For it is proper that the three things, nature and fate and freedom, should be continued in existence until the procession of which I before spoke be completed, and the appointed measure and number of its evolutions be accomplished, even as it seemed good to him who ordains of what kind shall be the mode of life, and the end of all creatures, and the condition of all beings and natures. I am convinced, said Avida, by the arguments you have brought forward, that it is not from his nature that a man does wrong, and also that all men are not governed alike. If you can further prove also that it is not from fate and destiny that those who do wrong so act, then will it be incumbent on us to believe that man possesses personal freedom, and by his nature has the power both to follow that which is right and to avoid that which is wrong, and will therefore also justly be judged at the last day. Are you, said Bardesanes, by the fact that all men are not governed alike, convinced that it is not from their nature that they do wrong? Why then you cannot possibly escape the conviction that neither also from fate exclusively do they do wrong, if we are able to show you that the sentence of the fates and potentates does not influence all men alike, but that we have freedom in our own selves, so that we can avoid serving physical nature and being influenced by the control of the potentates. "Prove me this," said Avida, "and I will be convinced by you, and whatsoever you shall enjoin upon me, I will do." "Have you," said Bardesan, "read the books of the astrologers who are in Babylon, in which is described what effects the stars have in their various combinations at the nativities of men, and the books of the Egyptians, in which are described all the various characters which men happen to have?" "I have read books of astrology," said Avida, "but I do not know which are those of the Babylonians and which those of the Egyptians." "The teaching of both countries," said Bardesan, "is the same." "It is well known to be so," said Avida. "Listen then," said Bardesan, "and observe that which the stars decree by their fate and their portions is not practiced by all men alike who are in all parts of the earth. For men have made laws for themselves in various countries, in the exercise of that freedom which was given them by God, forasmuch as this gift is in its very nature opposed to that fate emanating from the potentates, who assume to themselves that which was not given them. I will begin my enumeration of these laws, so far as I can remember them, from the East, the beginning of the whole world.